Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and today I'm excited to be joined by a special guest, Brian Davies. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it. So for a little bit of context before you provide much more context, Brian and I went to the same high school. And so Brian, you're a little bit younger than me, and you're good friends with both of my brothers and played sports all through, through high school. And we'll get into that. So for the listeners out there, who are you and kind of what are you up to today?
Yeah, so I've in the past 5 years I've been moving around a little bit. Left Maryland and did decided to change my career and went to Boston. Decide I wanted to work on planes the rest of my life.
Okay.
So I went from a high school teacher to acquisition for aircraft, and
Nice.
then kind of the world took me back. I never thought I'd be coming back to the Mid Atlantic, and now I'm here in Virginia enjoying the finer summers that Virginia provides.
It's been a little cooler at least in Maryland, the last few days. But how long were you in Boston for? I'm just curious.
3 years,
Okay.
and and
Nice.
it was wonderful. The only time I'd been there for one day to play UMass when I was in college. Thought I
Uh-huh.
would never go back, and then I spent
Yeah.
3 great years there,
Nice.
transforming my career.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah, we took the kids up there. I think it was summer 2019. So pre-pandemic, for 4 days, in the summer. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. It was amazing. It was so walkable. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on the weather, obviously, but yeah, it was a fantastic city to check out. But um, so that's good context for today. But obviously, the meat of what we want to get into is centered around mostly the adversity that you've been through, with some health struggles, and and then how you were able to overcome that. And one of the things I want to just reiterate, I've said this on other episodes, but we don't act like, you know, Brian, you went through some adversity and now you don't have any adversity and now you live in abundance entirely. And, you know, um, it's not like that, but I think we can look back on some serious struggles that people have gone through, and you certainly have gone through some real challenges. And pull out some lessons learned from that. And the whole intent of the show is to inspire people, and to help them understand that they're not alone in the fact that they're going through a hard time, and that um they can get through it, over it, around it, whatever, and get to kind of the mental, whatever that looks like for that person, but abundance, whether it's financial, physical, all of the above. But yeah, so if you could, for the listeners, can set the stage a little bit. I know you were, like I said, you played sports, and I remember you from playing basketball, and my brother would say, just what a hard worker you were. And just, I mean, yeah, I just remember a very positive, hard work ethic, and a positive person. So you know unfortunately, your situation took a turn, that we're going to get into. So set the stage for us. You can start wherever you'd like, as far as high school, college, or but just go from there if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks everybody for tuning into this. So going back to my days, as my dad would like to say, I was never good at doing anything the first time. So I generally put my head down and just kept working through everything that I've done. It's not a natural ability. It's just as he might say, like a stubbornness to want to be better at something, and what I expected of myself, and that kind of parlayed throughout my high school career. Playing sports with the Batemans and
Yeah.
everybody. That I was the guy off the bench. I was never the first person that you called upon, but I knew it would take work, and where I wanted to be. I wanted to be someone that my friends and my teammates relied on, but wasn't solely focused on one thing. So, my
Hmm.
life in growing up was I would go, I was never in the house. I was out with friends skateboarding, out with other friends just hanging out. I was with my friends playing sports. Being from Philadelphia and then moving to Maryland, pick up basketball was a wonderful thing. Uh, just that ability to be outside and do things and kind of see where I was measured up against other people meant a lot to me because I knew I
Hmm.
needed to where and when I needed to work and how hard I needed to do it. I actually remember it's one play in high school lacrosse that really changed everything. We were on a face-off
Hmm.
after the other team scored, and I'm on the wing of the field, and as the face-off's happening, the ball is free, and I'm running next to somebody, and I just took off. And I took off and I got the ball and we went down and we actually had a fast break and scored. And I realized what it took to be better. And then that parlayed, this was my junior year of high school, parlayed into playing lacrosse at UMBC. Unfortunately, my senior year of high school, I broke my shoulder blade in half. So I
Oh,
have a
geez.
metal plate across it, which is ironically kind of the precursor to the rest of
Mm,
the next 20 years of my life. Uh, Finished up when my high school coaches went to coaching college. It was at a local school. I finished up there, had a wonderful career, was really looking forward to what was coming next.
mhm.
And I graduated in December 2003, and that's really where my story,
So it
the
takes a turn.
yeah, that I mean, it goes wildly,
Yeah.
out of control from there.
Not how you would have predicted it, I would imagine.
Yeah,
So just now, did you play, what sports did you play lacrosse in college? You did, right?
I
You
did.
is at UMBC and then somewhere else.
Stevenson. Yep,
Stevenson. Okay.
Stevenson.
Um, and was that the one you didn't play basketball in college?
No, no.
Okay.
There was only one. Funny story connected to the Batemans that
Uh-huh.
uh, Josh and Rob convinced I would have never played lacrosse again, and Josh and Rob convinced me to play, and
Nice.
and that sport took over my life.
Yeah, it's an awesome sport. I mean, yeah, we're a big lacrosse family, so that's guilty as charged there. But it's a fun sport. So you got out of college, and then what happened?
So December 2003, I graduated, and I had already been working a full-time job my last semester, and was kind of really looking forward. I was working at a business, an entity of a Zurich Insurance that my dad kind of helped me get into, and I saw a lot of my future just like he did. He did well, and I could be a growing professional, and I could go out on Friday nights with my friends and really be that working class uh, life that we
Hmm.
have here in Baltimore.
Yeah,
And
comfortable. I mean,
just
secure, comfortable,
yeah,
the good life, right?
yeah, just the building blocks to getting, to being that good adult
Sure.
per se.
Yeah.
And I had a small cyst cut out of my back March 2004.
Okay.
And what it did is it triggered a hereditary illness. Everybody affectionately knows it, ulcerative colitis. And when it triggered, it immediately was out of control.
Hmm.
For the next 6 months, I was 200 pounds and a well-built athlete. And I
Hmm.
went down to 140. Uh,
Wow.
my, my skin was just pale and just sickly. And my endurance, I loved running. Running was always my favorite thing to do. I couldn't make it more than a quarter mile without starting to just be in agony. And so from March to that Thanksgiving break, I just started a career as a teacher. was really excited about it, and my health was getting worse and worse. I couldn't make it through 50 minutes of my class period without feeling ill.
Hmm.
And they finally diagnosed it being ulcerative colitis. But what they didn't realize, and it only came out uh, the next 2 months, is that I had a infection, a C. diff under it.
Hmm.
So at that point, I'd wake up in the morning and take 45 pills to try to control the colitis. And because of the infection, it didn't do anything. It was every bit of medicine was just irrelevant.
Wow.
And so the only time I actually still felt manageable was when I would try to run and I would try
Okay.
to work out, and it was just getting worse and worse. And finally, so January 2005, I go to the doctor and I say, "Doc, I'm it feels like fire is going up my leg." And he grabs my foot and he looks at it and he has this very quizzical look, and he goes, "Brian, you're a diabetic. You're taking all this medicine. It's neuropathy. Don't worry about it."
Hmm.
So 2 weeks after that, they give me a medicine to try to control the colitis. This is just before Valentine's Day, and I remember it. I'm at a parent teacher conference. I go home. I take this medicine, and it
Mhm.
feels like concrete's going through my system.
So
And
just to back up for a split second.
yeah,
So this medicine is for neuropathy. Is that or is this is for the colitis?
colitis.
Okay.
And
So same medicine or, similar medicine that you've been taking for quite some time, not a new medicine at this point.
this one was the new medicine.
Okay. All right.
It
Just
lasted for 24 hours.
okay. Okay. All right. So, but it was to deal with the colitis, but a new
Correct.
medicine. Okay. Got it. Understood. All right.
And so from there, I went into the hospital, and so for a series of, I'd be in the hospital for a week, out of the hospital for a week, and the stories of the day to day is just an absolute struggle. I mean, I was bedridden. Uh, Life is going on. My favorite season, spring, is happening. I'm supposed to be coaching lacrosse, doing my high school history teacher thing and coaching and
Mm-hmm.
the things I wanted to do in life. And uh, I had this. I had to go up to the principal and say, the doctor said I can't finish the year. And so now I was even more isolated because now the people that I could kind of talk to about this were gone.
Mm-hmm.
My friends
Yeah.
that I worked with were there. And I was a burden to them because now I'm giving them work to do in my
Problems
absence.
or
Yeah.
yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that's, I mean, and this is one of the risks with, doing a podcast like this, to be honest, is it's very easy to gloss over.
Yeah.
Oh, well, he had some hard days or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, this was many, many hours and days and weeks and months. And
Yeah.
I mean, again, I didn't go through it, but it's just, it's hard to kind of put that in context fully for about what you went through. And we've had some similar episodes. One is going to be out in a few days as of today, but where just, I mean, yeah, hospital and all kinds of health challenges. And it's, I don't want it to come across like we're just, oh yeah, that was he had a hard time for a couple of days there. But okay, so and I remember, because I did watch your TED talk that's I recommend the listeners watch as well on YouTube. And you talked about, and I think you're going to get into this, but the it's not just a physical challenge here. You just started to touch on it. You were very isolated and becoming, or at least you saw it as you were becoming a burden to people. It seems like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah, dive into that a little bit more.
Absolutely. And this is where it becomes really the mental anguish was more and
Mhm.
more difficult. So the day before the Easter Eve, uh, I went to sleep, didn't think any, just like a normal day of struggling, as all of them had been. And I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning with a pain in my leg that was the most pain I've ever been in my life. And I'm shaking uncontrollably, water sweating out of it just pouring out of my body.
Hmm.
And for 6 hours, I tried to get help. I couldn't dial the phone. I wasn't calm enough to walk anywhere. It was just an absolute struggle. And the only way I thought I could get help, and the idiot in me, to which I freely admit, would call my dad for help. And he drives over, he takes me to the hospital. And I remember going back when they went to check me in, they look at me, and I will never repeat what I said because it's profanity laced, but the
Mhm.
pain was so bad that they just wheeled me right to the back. And I remember just being by myself.
Hmm.
And they look in 15 seconds, they take a Doppler on my leg and see 5 blood clots over my right ankle. So they know what the issue is. And it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'd made it 5, 6 hours without any, just trying to get help, got help. And now I'm by myself. I don't know how to control it. I can't. At this point, I realize that my mental ability to just put my head down and keep pushing
Mhm.
wasn't working.
That's not helpful. That's not going to do it. What you'd
Yeah,
relied on for all those years to get through, difficult times was to put your head down and work harder, right?
yeah,
And that's not going to do it here.
yeah. Literally and figuratively running through every obstacle I could,
Hmm.
and I couldn't stand up on my. I couldn't stand up.
Hmm.
Uh, so for the next 5 weeks, uh, and this always made me feel terrible that there was 4 surgeries to try to open up the blood clot, and none of them worked. And you could
Hmm.
actually see on my toes they were becoming black,
Hmm.
and which was gangrenous. So gangrene had set in, and it was growing, and you could see it coming up my leg. And I remember I was at my sister's graduation from James Madison, and I couldn't put my foot down, and I had a soft, like a slipper you wear around the house, and they were worried about where I was, and I'm looking around at this whole party, and I'm like, I can't. I'm not one of you. I'm
Hmm.
out of. I'm not in this sphere, and it felt
Hmm.
everything became more and more isolating. And then I remember the doctor. We go in the last time to the doctor before I had the last surgery. And it was one of the last times I remember reaching back to friends in a way that was uh, the way I used to be, very open and talking to people and not feeling so isolated. Because being in the hospital, you can't help but feel isolated from reality.
Hmm.
And when I was there, the doctor comes in, it's a Monday, mid May, and he goes, Brian, in 24 hours, you have to tell me how much of your leg do you want to lose? The clots weren't moving. Everything was just, it was getting, you could see the gangrene just keep moving up. And I asked him for 10 minutes, talked to
Um,
my
eh,
dad,
This
talked
is
to my
crazy.
dad for a minute. And I called a good friend of mine, Matt. He's in the area still. Uh,
Hmm.
Wonderful guy. And he was getting married in 3 weeks.
Hmm.
And I said, hey, buddy, I promise you I'll walk down the aisle at the wedding. I promise you.
Hmm.
And 24 hours later, I woke up with my leg 5 inches below my knee, my right ankle amputated. And I'll forever remember that moment not because of the amputation, because when the nurse came over, she went to place something down where my leg used to be, and I started screaming like someone was hurting me, and just how my mind had warped into protecting that area and eliminating everything around me really was trans it transcended what was
Hmm.
actually happening to me, and really was the mental battle that I was about to go under for the next 15 years of my life.
So so everything seemed like a threat physically, or like you just wanted to keep everything away.
If, yeah, I wouldn't let anyone touch it.
Mm,
I remember the doctor went to unwrap it one time, and I swung at him. I didn't even know I did it.
mm,
It was
mhm,
so, everything about that area, my whole life centered around my leg.
mm,
The rest of my body was irrelevant. It just had to make sure that my leg didn't hurt, or nobody
mhm.
made it hurt worse. During the course of those surgeries, I slept for 45 minutes a day.
I mean,
I'd be up from 5 a.m. to 5:45, and when the birds would chirp in the morning, I'd be up. And I have a lot of energy, so when I
mhm,
couldn't expend it, I couldn't go to
mhm,
sleep, and I
mm.
was bedridden, and it was
How old were
just
you at this point?
24.
24.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I mean, there are no words. It's just, it sucks. I mean, it's just awful. And this started because of the removal of the cyst. I mean,
Yep. It was a really mundane. My sister had the same cyst removed when she,
mhm,
evidently, I think it's like some words of, my math could be wrong, but they said like
mm,
50 to 60% of people have this.
mhm,
Some people just need to get it cut out. It's a
mhm,
polynidal cyst, and it
mhm.
just it was the triggering event to uh,
Wow.
autoimmune illnesses to kick on.
Hmm. Jeez. I mean, appreciate you being so open and sharing about it. So, and then, okay, then you had your ankle and a good part of your lower leg removed.
Yeah.
Um, and then, so talk us through what you're going through mentally at that point.
So I the I kind of go back. I always go back to when I need to do something. I just put my head down, figure out the next step, and just kind of go.
Hmm.
And it took me a little bit to figure out what I needed to do in order to. The first one was just to get out of the rehab facility.
Hmm.
They said you needed to be better at doing this, X, Y, and Z. You have to
Hmm.
show them that you can get around your house and not be a detriment to yourself.
Hmm.
So I was doing all the exercise. This is actually Memorial Weekend. I remember watching Johns Hopkins win their championship
Hmm.
from a bed in a hospital,
Hmm.
and I just remember going, I got to get out of here. And my good friend Todd and Chris showed up to see how I was doing, and I had tried to walk out of the complex. I was so
Hmm.
physically uh, just malnourished, and I hadn't been outside in 3 months that I made it to this little bench outside, and I couldn't move. And Todd
Hmm.
actually went and picked up the wheelchair from inside to get me back inside. And
Hmm.
we're kidding around and palling around, but I remember being in at that facility, and they do great things, but for me mentally, it was the worst place I could ever be,
Hmm.
because I was proving a point in my mind that I was going to be different from everybody for the rest of my life. And the
Hmm.
more I couldn't interact with my friends, the more I lost touch with the fact that they still saw me as Brian, but I didn't see myself as Brian.
Hmm.
So without
Interesting.
kind of that back and forth with them socially,
Hmm.
I was losing I was losing touch of what it meant to really be an interactive person
Right.
and living life.
And they were losing touch of the changes that had been occurring to you, I would guess. It's like,
Yeah, they
yeah.
I remember one of them took me out not long after this all had happened, and saw a friend from high school, and they turned to me and they go, "I thought you were dead." Like, I heard that story, and I go, at that point I was doing a little bit better, and I was like, "Well, it certainly felt like it."
Right,
but
right.
but it really went to the fact that I lost a year of being some people I had been friends with, growing up for
Mhm,
almost my whole school career. I had lost complete touch with, and
mhm,
some of them I got, wish them well in the world, but we don't exist as friends anymore because that disconnection from that point.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that happens to all of us, but I mean, in your case, it's a little more extreme, and there's a lot more of dynamics and nuances to it, and it's a little more complicated. But so, in your talk you gave, you spoke about the kind of the, I guess, the disappointment you had with your friend's wedding,
Yeah,
and what that meant. And let's get onto that as far as the changes you've made mentally and the lessons you've learned about goal setting and those kinds of things.
absolutely. So that friend that I called Matt, his wedding really meant a lot to me. It was the first time in many, many months, and I've always been a very goal oriented. Um, I I push towards those goals, and then once I hit it, there's another one. And that was the first goal I had reestablished for myself since being sick. I had 3 weeks from the time I lost my leg to be ready to walk down the aisle at that wedding. And I remember just as in those 3 weeks, as every day got closer, I got a little bit more worried that I wouldn't even be able to have the attempt to walk. And the week of the wedding, Matt and I had been talking and said, "Buddy, I'm going to get there. Just I don't want you to worry. I'll get there." And my dad really helped. My family had helped me get all the things I needed to. And the first day I got a leg was the day before his wedding. It was the day of
Wow.
his dress rehearsal, and I I thought I could just go ahead and walk, which was uh, part of my ignorance is that because I think I can do it,
Hmm.
when the reality was that I really couldn't.
Hmm.
But I remember getting that leg and walking, and my dad was there, and we were on 28th Street down in Baltimore, and the first steps I walked, I cried so hard, and I knew I could give myself a chance to walk down the aisle at the wedding.
Hmm.
And as we're getting there, and I'm like trying to do it without crutches, there is no way I'm going to be able to walk. And to me, crutches were an assistance that I was vehemently against.
Hmm.
And after talking to Matt, right as we're leading up to the wedding, he's like, "Listen, Brian, use the crutches. It's going to be a long day. You haven't been out like this in a long time. It's not a big deal. The
Hmm.
wedding happens. It's a great time. I I got to dance with my date who came with me, who was a longtime friend from Hereford, Tracy. And for a minute, it felt okay. But the next morning and the days that went on, I mean, as a teacher, you spend the summer, doing other things.
Hmm.
And I was sitting in my living room again by myself with nobody else around me because most of my friends are working or they're doing family things or who are
Hmm.
teachers. Like they all had something to do. So there I am isolated again.
Hmm.
And I tried to start setting more goals, but in the back of my head, I failed at walking down the aisle at the wedding. And to me, that failure it was, it was something I couldn't accept. And I couldn't accept it also because it was one of the closest people to me.
Hmm.
And
And like you said, it was your first goal you'd set in quite some time, since
yeah.
so it wasn't like it was one of 100 goals you set last week or whatever. It's a big one, right, in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it was the goal.
mhm,
And and I and it took me a while and I started to after the days that went on, my mental state was just deteriorating rapidly. And I'm not going to say I was not suicidal. I wasn't in a state like that, but I equate it to being on a roller coaster. and my emotions had built so much that I was at the very top of that roller coaster.
Hmm.
And when it went over went down,
Hmm.
I was going to take everything around me out. I didn't care if my house burned down. I didn't care if I wrecked something. I didn't have that care anymore.
Hmm.
And I sat at the house, and I said, I got to the point where I called my dad, and that poor guy's trying to work. It's 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and he's trying to
Hmm.
do work, and I'm screaming about just being upset. And he goes, Brian, of all the people in the world who could take a problem like this on,
Hmm.
is there anybody else you would even let that happen to? And I said, no,
Hmm.
I'd take it 100% of the time.
Because you were
And,
thinking kind of like, why me?
yeah,
Uh,
oh
uh,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I mean,
yeah,
I'm not. I
yeah,
can imagine, right? I'm just trying to set the stage. You're thinking, why is this all happening to me?
yeah,
Um, and then you asked, and then I think you said in your talk that he said that's the wrong question. Um,
yep.
who
He
who
said,
would who would
he
you give
said,
this to, or something like
yeah,
that?
he said, what are you going to do about it? Was
Yeah,
the
yeah,
second question.
yeah.
And it just clicked. And for all the people that had spent all of that time making sure I was okay.
Hmm.
I mean, that those people are they're officially in the world friends, but they're family. And I remember talking to my dad, and I hung up the phone with him then, but we talked later, and I said, at that moment, I decided I couldn't be average. I looked at being not being unique as something negative, when all of a sudden being unique could be something positive. And it really was a role reversal. And what I was going to do with every one of those days was going to support the infrastructure that I had: my mom, my dad, my sister, her, my brother-in-law, my friend Todd, my friend Matt, my friend Brad, my friend Kevin, my friend Jamie, my friend Kenny, the list of people who fought with me through all of this. And when that clicked and I realized that they had my back, I needed to set those goals, and I needed to set them to be something much better than what I the set the goals I set for myself
Hmm.
had to be in some way. If I hit a goal,
Hmm.
someone could take that part of that story and relate
Hmm.
it to themselves.
Yeah, and so we are, unfortunately, there's so much. We have limited
Yeah.
time, but I mean, this, and I mentioned to you before we hit record, this one of the themes of so far with my podcast and the show has been with people getting through adversity. One of the big shifts has been mentally focusing on others and incorporating others into their kind of view. And I hadn't heard it, phrased the same way with regard to incorporating others into goal setting and defining success. I hadn't heard it until you're listening to your story. But it's a similar theme, I think, coming through in these episodes, is that, look, it makes, I mean, of course you have to be focused on yourself when you're when your health is the number one concern, right? That's not a bad thing, of course, but at some point, if you're going to get past that, and again, I haven't been in your shoes, I'm just kind of looking at it from the
Yeah.
outside, but that's you've got to focus on others and incorporate others and think bigger, instead of just thinking about
So,
yourself. Is that
yeah.
fair to say? What would you
Yeah.
say to that?
I think most of us humans, the worst critic I have is myself.
Hmm.
And if I
Yeah.
can't narrate and incorporate other people in, it's negative, negative, negative. You should have
Mm.
done better. You should have done it this way. And
Hmm.
when I thought I failed to walk down the aisle at the wedding, Matt told me that he was proud of me. And I go,
That's awesome.
proud? Like,
How could you be proud?
I needed crutches. And he goes, you got a leg yesterday. This is
Right.
great.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's,
so once I realized to incorporate their input,
mhm,
of course, as a human, I want to do everything perfectly. But
sure.
if I go back to what my dad's been saying about me my entire life, I've never done anything perfect the first time, and I'm guessing most people haven't either. But I had
No.
a really not realistic view of how I did things,
Mhm,
and I realized that the process to reaching all those goals that I set for myself, it didn't need to be perfect, but what I
mhm,
could control, I needed to be. I'll put it this way: Barry Brownlee, who was the principal at Archbishop Curley when I got the
mhm,
job there, had the greatest advice I had ever heard
hmm,
given to anybody. He said, Brian, and this is when I was sick too, and he really didn't know it. He goes, Brian, I don't expect you to be perfect every day, but when you walk in here, if you're at 80%, give me all 80.
hmm. That's really good. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So that kind of became reflective in how I felt that day, that if I couldn't walk because of the prosthetic was hurting,
Mhm,
that other leg was going to
hmm,
give, I was still going to give everything I
hmm.
could.
Yeah,
And, and then people's input was going to help me get to that goal.
sure. So it sounds like, you know, there's obviously not, it's a process, right? This whole thing is a long process, but it sounds like you took some time, a long time to kind of maybe forgive yourself for not having met that goal at your friend's wedding. About how much time was that we're talking about?
So that was probably about 2 months, but I'll tell you,
Okay.
I think about it every day.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So no, and like I said, we are unfortunately starting to run out of time here, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't want to, most of this episode is going to be centered on your adversity, but we haven't even talked about, your the successes that you had. Let's try to highlight some of those. Like, I mean, the hockey stuff is awesome. So if you could, you know, fairly succinctly hit some of
Yeah.
the highlights and maybe one or two other kind of lessons learned that the listeners could apply.
Absolutely. Through that process, the goals just started growing. In the multiple pages of goals, I don't even write them down anymore because I just there's too much pages that it would take.
Mhm,
Uh, in 2010, an army amputee down in not far from Baltimore,
mhm,
his story got me to want to play hockey.
mm,
And this past year, I played against Canada, the Canadian national
mm,
team, at an event with the Wounded Warriors. I've gotten to play against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
mm.
I've gotten
That's awesome.
to go across the U.S. Another one of my difficult stories was making the U.S. team, but not being
Hmm.
allowed on the plane because of my health.
Hmm.
Um, but I've also I got it helped me focus and get my master's degree from Johns Hopkins, which I still
That's
think is one
awesome.
of the best things I've ever done for myself. I've walked the Great Wall of China,
Mm,
parts of it. I've biked through the Alps. Uh,
mm,
I've traveled to so many countries, and the one I'm probably most proud of, because being a diabetic and being an amputee, got to spend some time in Afghanistan,
mm,
uh, in something that I thought was near and dear to me, but I had always been told no for both of those reasons.
mm,
And kind of that perseverance in the fight, and
mhm,
like I told you before, fighting the good fight
mhm,
every day, not being doing things the right way and following the process and listening to people.
mhm.
I got to spend 2 weeks going around parts of the world that I had never seen, and in a normal circumstance, and if it wasn't for my leg, I would never have seen it.
Hmm.
I never would be in the position to do these things.
Yeah.
And Team USA is the best one. I thought
Yeah.
I was a pretty good lacrosse player, and
Hmm.
I had a pretty good ego when I played in college. But
Yeah.
um, when Team USA says you can put on this jersey, it means something so
I
much
can't. Yeah.
different. And the first in the book that I wrote, one of the proudest moments I had, and one of the best cries I probably had in my entire life, was scoring my first goal
It's awesome.
in Team USA. And
And then the name of the book is Defining Purpose, right?
correct. Yeah, defining purpose, my fight with ulcerative colitis.
And people can find that on Amazon and
Yeah,
anywhere else.
Amazon. Yep,
Okay.
just Amazon.
It's awesome. So yeah, I mean, it's that's just amazing. Just to making, you never played hockey. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, it's like, and here, I mean, it's just incredible. You know, I guess there's some similarities between lacrosse and hockey, you
yeah.
know, but
I
that is
they tell me it made me a worse hockey player.
okay. You had to unlearn some bad habits, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I tried it on like roller hockey like one time, and I didn't move. I just tried to score a bunch of goals, and um, I guess some people would say that's what I did in lacrosse too. But anyway, so okay, I mean, just mind blowing. Like it's yeah. I mean, the fact that like, look, I mean, you didn't, you know, you didn't do anything per se to start this whole health. It's not like you made a bad decision or were, you know, running in, you know, in the wrong crowd or something. And so, I mean, how do you look at all this looking back, you know, as far as this happening to you when you weren't necessarily making poor decisions?
I, I think the world offers a lot of opportunity that people don't really recognize. We get into the moments of our daily life that you just kind of move along and you don't think about it that much.
Hmm.
And at at any given time, we're all going to feel something.
Hmm.
And in my story, I don't. The one thing I don't like is when people say like, "Hey, my story is nothing like yours." Your story is absolutely like mine.
Hmm.
The ability to withstand and the trauma that we feel in the day is it's the same for everybody, but
Hmm.
different in way it presents itself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think what you do with that is always is the story that you're going to tell forever.
Hmm.
I remember someone asked, what do you want to be as a teacher?" And I said, I don't want anyone to, you don't have to say that Mr. Davies was my favorite teacher, but if they say there's a story where this teacher did something amazing or did something good or helped me in something, and that goes for a grandmother tells their daughter and their daughter tells their kid,
Hmm.
you just lived for 4 generations.
Yeah,
So
it's a great way to look at it.
what are you providing to the world that says, you know, Jamie, I was here, Brian, I was here,
Hmm.
and it changed. As a teacher, you would like to say you help everyone's life,
Right.
but you truly make a difference, a cataclysmic difference that you can define with one or two.
Hmm.
And if you've hit that one person, you've done your job.
Hmm.
And so I just get, luckily, I might be a little bit better of a storyteller, and people can, there's much more meat to my story, but everybody has their story. And I hope
Yeah.
that 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 ability to overcome those obstacles, never be afraid of an obstacle and keep going, because those goals that you set yourself, they wouldn't be goals if there wasn't obstacles there. They would just be things to do.
That's true. That is really, yeah, that's really good. Um, yeah, so much I could kind of piggyback on there, but I'm gonna move on. I'm just gonna fire off a few rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, fire
Um,
away.
if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
I have a rule that I never look back
Hmm.
to change anything. Because
Okay.
if you look back, that means you wish something else had happened.
Hmm. Right. That's a good point. All right. If you could have coffee, I don't know if you drink coffee, but if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be?
Ooh, that is a great one. For especially for the history teacher.
It doesn't, yeah, right. And they could be alive today. It's, you know, it doesn't
I
have to be your
think
favorite person ever.
definitely not my favorite person, but Eisenhower.
Okay.
I love that World War II era.
There you go. I like it. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
Pay off a few bills,
There you go.
live by the beach, and I know that I have a deal that if me and Brad and Ken, my old neighbors, if anyone won the lottery, we'd buy a hockey rink, and the other two would work for the one who won the money.
Nice. I love it. Um, let's see. Besides your own book, what is a book that you'd recommend for the audience?
Ooh, there's a great one. It's about a Navy SEAL who overcame. Oh, I wish I remember the name of it right now. It's about a Navy SEAL who overcame an issue with drugs and being a reckless youth to being a Navy SEAL. He unfortunately, or fortunately for us in the world, uh, didn't survive combat. But oh
Hmm.
man, it is a wonderful book. I will. Now you
Yeah, no
got me.
worries. There's illusion or victory? No, guess not.
No, no. I'll
Um,
look it up as we're talking.
sounds good. We can put it in the show notes. Um, let's see. What's one question that you wish I'd asked you that I haven't? Anything else you want to touch on that we haven't covered?
No, not particularly. I mean, I will offer it if you ever want a part two.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
welcome telling the story in any because this is only the first 5 years of the difficult, really the first year of the difficulty. The story doesn't end. You know, it goes. It actually most recently I had a surgery to finally, hopefully, finish everything 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
So
Gotcha.
it has a lot of appendices.
Right. Well, like I said, we don't pretend that your adversity is behind you for any of us. I mean, that's, like I said, that's the point of the show is we're never done dealing with adversity and hardship and challenge. And that's the whole point of this show, is to inspire people. Like you said, everyone's adversity looks different and takes on a different form, but we all have it. And so how are you going to deal with that? And so yeah, you're not done with your adversity either, but I do think you've made a major shift mentally. And you highlighted a couple of key points over that process, at least the part of the process that we were able to cover today. So did you find the book?
Yeah, it's actually as I was looking it up, it was a second one. It's called Brothers Forever: The Story About Travis Manion and Brendan Looney.
Okay, cool. Nice. I'll have to check that out. All right. If any of our listeners wanted to reach out to you, Brian, how can they do so?
LinkedIn, actually, that's
Okay.
the one social media that I really kind of follow. That where I post the videos, and actually even in YouTube, I'll have the video up. I used to keep that video that I sent you on a
Hmm.
private link, but it's about time to release it to the world. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll have
just
to put that in the show notes as well, the link to that video. That was really good. It was like 17, 18 minutes.
yeah.
Very inspiring. So I really
And
enjoyed that.
in my email address, I'll give it out to everybody, is just
Sure.
Brian Davies 36 at Gmail. So
Perfect. Awesome. Well, again, Brian, yeah, we will have to have you back on if you're good with it. I know there's a ton we didn't cover. And I just want to thank you once again for coming on and being open and sharing, not sharing something that's not that easy to talk about, I would imagine, and trying to help our listeners benefit. So thanks a lot, Brian. Really appreciate your time.
no, and thank you for the forum. It's I think what you're doing is truly something that I think the world needs to hear more of. And because when you hear about adversity and abundance, there's not a singular definition to what abundance looks like. And I think
No, yeah.
what you're doing is amazing, and please keep it up. You have an avid listener now.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. And I do, we are trying to grow the listener base, and so, to the listeners out there, look, I'm not super salesy. But I want you all to share the episodes, share it with your friends, share it with your family, give us a, 5-star review if you think that's applicable. We'd love to grow the listener base and trying to impact as many people as we can in a positive way. Some of our episodes are more real estate, finance, business focused. Obviously this one wasn't, but I mean, this has been fantastic. I mean, we're all humans, and so I think everyone can relate to a lot of this episode. So thanks again, Brian. Really appreciate it. And to the listeners out there, thanks a lot for spending your most valuable resource with us, which is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.